So let's get started today. So now I'm going to make the rich fruit cake. So the rich fruit cake is like every year any baker has to try that, and I've been doing that for all the several years, and every year I try to improvise on what I have done the previous year, make it little better than that. Like I still go back to 8 years before, and the rich fruit cake I made that time is that the perfect one. So obviously from there, because there are different versions of the rich fruit cake itself. Different countries have different the benchmark for the rich fruit cake. Some are dense, like extremely dense with the fruit, and that is what is the definition for that. But what is our Indian palate going to do with such a dense fruit cake? So I did try a lot of it, and then I have arrived at this one, which is according to me is that the perfect, with the right caramel and the right color. And for everything, I've just matched up to get on to this rich fruit cake. So also the soaking part is very important, for which the right color caramel syrup is what I find it to go on, give that flavor, the depth, and also the color. So we are going to start with the caramel syrup that I'm going to also make it and show. The recipe of this is not included, but it will be added as a separate document, and it will be uploaded on your the website, on your dashboard. Now after making the caramel syrup, we are going to soak the fruits with alcohol. So non-alcoholic version, the document is separate, so you can go through that. The rum wouldn't be there, but instead of that, the fruit juice will be there. And the alcoholic version, when the rum is added, you have to allow it to be in the room temperature, and that is going to give the flavor to the dry fruits. Now, if you're going to use the non-alcoholic version, then the fruit juices will be added, the apple and the orange, into the dry fruits. And I suggested to go into the fridge overnight, so you could use it the next day. Now, what if, people are talking about the 6 months soaked fruits and the 1-year-old soaked fruits? They are really good, obviously. But now if we are not prepared, like how should we anticipate what the next Christmas is going to give us? Like, are we going to have some 500 loaves of Christmas, rich fruit cake order, or like, maybe we have soaked for some 500 loaves and then we have only 50 orders. They're like, how are we going to anticipate what is going to happen next year? So this recipe is, designed in such a way that even if you do not have a year-old or 6 months or even 3 months old soaked fruit, we are going to have that same results. Like, it is okay for you to take up like a 10 loaves of a rich fruit cake, and you know that this recipe is going to save you. And we are going to get the exact result of how a year-old soaked fruit is going to give to your cake. So we are going to cook the soaked fruit. So there is a step in the workflow which says cook the fruits, and that we are also going to do, and that will make the fruits aged by the process of cooking, and that we will be adding into the dry fruits. So there are several stages. First will be the caramel syrup that I'm going to make, and then I'm going to soak the fruit with alcohol. The non-alcoholic version will be without the rum. You will be adding the orange juice and the apple juice, and that's the only change. So I'm not going to do the non-alcoholic version here. But I have tried that out earlier, and that is going to work exactly the same. Only the alcoholic punch will be missing. Otherwise, the cake and the end result is going to be quite good. After soaking, I'm going to cook the soaked fruits. That will be the third step. After cooking, and I'm going to use that cooked dry fruits to make the batter itself, and then I'm going to allow it to send it for baking. Now, when I'm going to bake, there again, it is not going to be like any other normal cake, which is a vanilla chocolate, which we bake at 180 degrees for like some 30-35 minutes. This we are going to slow bake for a longer period of time, and that is going to give that texture for the cake. It shouldn't be like very spongy, but then it has to be dense, but also it should have the cake feeling, but not too dense that you're not able to take a slice out. So this, if you're going to cut, you're going to have a beautiful slice out of it, for which we are going to bake the cake at 140 degrees Celsius. And for this quantity that even you're going to make, you might have to bake it for 1.5 hours, and even a little longer, depending on how the top is going to be browned. And you want that to be completely baked with a beautiful color that is like a little more than golden brown and a little less than like the deep brown. That is where we are going to stop, and that is going to take almost about 1.5 hours, and that you have to give. So long in the oven, then how are we going to prevent it from over burning the sides, and is it not going to crust being in the oven for so long? So we are also going to prepare the pan, and that I have inserted in the workflow, and that pan that will be prepared has to have a wet strip around that I'm going to make right in front of you. I'm going to dip the cloth in the water, squeeze it out, and then pin it around. So everything I'm going to show. So I just suggest you to take down notes as you watch. So when you're going to do, you wouldn't miss out on even the smaller steps. So this flow of the rich fruit cake that will start right now, I want you to follow through when you are making, so you just get the exact same result as me. Okay, so your doubts, you could type it out. And if I have to answer that, then I will get back at the end of all the 4 products that will be baked. And if there are doubts that my team could answer to you, that you say maybe missed out on what I've told already, then you will get the answer on the chat box. Okay, so let me start with adding the sugar in the saucepan. I'm going to also pour the water and then start the stove. Okay, so the sugar is added, and then I'm just adding the water. And start with medium heat. And this I'm going to cook. So the caramel plays a very important part. Like, is it just going to be like too brown? And then is it going to make the cake bitter? Okay, and but is it going to be like not as brown? Like, is it like the honey flavor? Or is it going to be not having that real punch of the caramel? Then all that depends on how much browning you're going to allow the sugar to go. So this, it could just take a few seconds that, it will brown a lot and then have that little bitter taste on the final cake. But then we are just going to be a little careful. I'm just going to increase and let the sugar syrup with the water first melt. So this water is quite enough on the medium heat for the sugar to melt completely. So allow the sugar to melt before it starts to boil, and that's very important. And that's in everywhere where you have to make sugar syrup, at any place that you have to allow to come into, like another ingredient baking. You don't allow the syrup to start boiling before letting the sugar dissolve completely. I have another portion of the water here ready. So once the caramel starts forming, I'm going to pour in that water and stop the caramelization and get to the right color that I am looking at. Okay, so now the sugar is dissolving. There is a little more that has to dissolve. And then it is going to start coming to a boil. Now once it boils, then I have to wait for the caramel color to turn up. And after the color starts appearing, I will have to be careful when the stage that I always stop making the caramel is, you start seeing that whiff of smoke coming out of the caramel. So the moment I see the whiff of smoke, I remove from heat immediately and then pour the additional water that I have here, and that will stop the caramelization, and that will give me the right depth of flavor that is needed. Now I'm just increasing the flame a bit, so that will speed up. Also the sugar is almost dissolved now. So I'm just going to allow the sugar syrup to come to a boil. So now it's starting to boil, that you can see. Mixing it up to just make sure the sugar is fully dissolved. So it's kind of nicely boiling. Now, the next step is to allow it to boil and wait for the color change. Now, obviously, the steam is just going to come. So you can see the steam is different, but then the whiff of smoke is a little different. Okay, so you can just see how the steam comes out. Okay, so when you also see that whiff of smoke coming out, then you can just find the difference between the steam and the whiff of smoke when it is going to turn into a caramel. The smoke turns, and then you can also feel, you could smell through that burnt, flavor, and that's when we have to stop it. So I'm just going to continue to boil the syrup. You could do it on the gas stove top, but we just need to have a control of how the sugar boils, and from there how it is going to turn into caramel. So this is thickening up, and then we are just going to wait until it turns brown. So it's thickened up. Now the color could slowly turn into light amber first. Okay, so this process is to make it easy for people like without any extra gadgets like the thermometer. So we just have to eyeball to the stage where the caramel forms, and I thought that will be pretty much easier for the home bakers out there who will be looking forward to the session. However, if you're having the kitchen thermometer that you could use, then you could just drop your kitchen thermometer in and wait for the sugar syrup turn to 320 degrees Fahrenheit, and that will be the stage where you have the caramel forming. And anywhere between 320 degree Fahrenheit to 350 degree Fahrenheit is where the caramel stays. And but then the highest, the 350, is going to be like quite bitter, for the cake. So stop anywhere between 320 to 330 if you're going to use the thermometer. But then instinctively you could look into it, wait for the color to change, and then have the whiff of smoke. And that I prefer to look into it and wait for the whiff of smoke. So then I could decide how much of the strength of caramel that I'm going to have in my cake. Now, what you can see, the boils are getting slower, and then they are bigger. And you can see the way in which the bubbles are forming there is quite different from the previous stage. So the temperature of this sugar syrup is quite increasing, and I can see the color is slowly turning into lightest amber at this stage. I'm going to continue waiting. So it's still light and it's not turned into caramel yet. So just need to be a little careful at this stage that if I'm just going to be a little away and not focus on what's happening to the caramel syrup at the stage, then it could burn. And now, once it just is changing color stage after stage, I have to be careful. And if I am just seeing the colors, that one important step is, you see, like even if it is on the stove, if there are hot spots, the color changes from one edge of the saucepan. Now, if you see that, then the other places in the saucepan doesn't turn brown in the same way as throughout. If it is not even, you see that one corner of the saucepan turns brown, you immediately lift the saucepan off the heat and keep swirling it around, distributing the caramel through the entire sugar syrup, and then put it back in the heat or the fire, and then allow the heat to get into the caramel or the sugar syrup evenly. Now, once you're going to have the caramel, you can see the bubbles just break off and then the color slowly changes. Now, it is almost the honey's color. Now, it is going to get to the caramel shade. Caramel is going to form. Now, I could smell the change. The caramel is just going to form now. You can see the color, the bubbles have gotten smaller and then they are just breaking off. That is one place where you can just be a little more careful. So you can see the color is changing. Now, I don't want to allow it to be on the stove and let the color keep on changing, then it will just go overboard. Now, the moment I see every stage the color changes, I'm going to lift it off the heat. Now you can see how the color is, right? Now, but this is lighter color. I lift it off the heat, swirl it properly, distribute the heat or the caramel throughout the entire caramel syrup, and then put it back. And then allow the heat to go through again. Now you can see the color is beautifully changed, but I'm just waiting for the next shade, right? So allow it to be on the stove, pick the heat up and wait for it to go one shade up, and then see if that smoke turns out. The temperature of the induction, okay. So it is at 180 degrees Celsius is what I've kept. The induction is 180 degrees Celsius. So it's just getting a little more brown than what it was before. I'm going to leave that there and allow that browning to happen. But the fear that it is going to over brown will tempt you from swirling. That's not a bad idea at all, because you're just being careful. But what you should avoid is looking for the color, and you have to be judging the color if it is lighter for me or if it is darker for me. Now this is lighter, okay, and so I'm just going to put it back few seconds at a time. You can see this color. So by swirling, I'm just stopping it from further caramelization. I'm controlling how much it should caramelize, right? So I'm just going to put it back and then allow it to come to one more boil. That way it is just going to go into that next stage. Now it is trying to boil around. And at this stage is what I will just stop. Now I can see the whiff of smoke also coming out. So any color lighter than this is not going to give the depth in the flavor. Okay, so you can see the whiff of smoke. I'm going to stop it. Okay, so I'm not sure if you're just able to see. The steam is different from the smoke, right? So I switched it off, right? And on top of this, now I'm going to take it off the heat. Now I'm going to add this water. It is just going to splatter out, okay? So you have to be a little careful at this step, right? And then mix it up. Now we are going to put this back on fire. And allow it to heat on medium flame. Don't wait for it to come to the honey's consistency when it is on the stove itself. Okay, so while it is hot, it is going to be quite thin, but then once it has cooled down, it will get into the honey's consistency. So the end product of this caramel syrup is we are looking at honey's consistency, but that will come only after it is cooled down. So after the addition of the second portion of the water, we'll bring it back. Now the steam comes out, it gives me the caramel's flavor. I can just smell that whiff of smoke is coming through at this stage. And obviously it's boiling quite enough. Now wait for just a couple of minutes. Anything longer than that, what happens? It comes down to honey's consistency here itself on the stove. Now when it comes to honey's consistency here itself, then once it cools down, it's like very difficult for you to transfer from that bowl and to use it onto your cake. So letting it boil. Okay, so I'm going to switch this off, okay, and take it off the heat. And I'm going to store it in a glass jar and allow it to cool completely. Now this looks as thin as you see that, but then it is going to get to the honey's consistency with this measurement and this 2 minutes on the heat after the addition of the second portion of the water. What you could see is that beautiful color. Okay, I think you could see how it is that wineish color with the reddish, golden, everything mixed together. So that is some gorgeous caramel syrup that needs to go into your rich fruit cake. Okay, so I'm just going to, it is very, very hot. We just need to be a little extra careful on that. Just dip it in water so I can just wipe off. So let me put the induction away. So the next step will be soaking the fruits. Let me keep the induction. I'm going to use it for cooking the fruits as well, right? So we need it for that. So I'm going to get the dried fruits needed for soaking. So the second step in the process of fruitcake making, the Christmas fruitcake making, will be the soaking part. So a beautiful fruit mixes. This is that part of the year when I just look forward to having these beautiful dried fruits come together for me, colorful in a plate, and that old monk ready for me to soak, which I look forward to every year. Usually when I start off soaking by the month of you know, September itself, and then have the 3 months old soaking. But then when I had to get this down, teaching something near the December itself, then you cannot allow that 3 months time for soaking. So then obviously had to hunt for a method which will be available to get everything soaked up and to be used right away. Okay, so here are the dry fruits and then the bowl. So everything goes into this bowl, and then the rum also goes. Now for the non-alcoholic version, in place of the rum, the equal quantity, but then in the document it's separately given. So go through that document which says non-alcoholic soaking, use that, put everything inside the dried fruits, and the zest goes in with the rum, and this has to be left in the room temperature for 1 day. And if you're going to leave it for longer with the rum, obviously it can stay for a week also in room temperature, no harm. But if you're going to use apple juice or orange juice, then it should go inside the fridge, because you don't want a fresh fruit soaking the fruits left outside. Okay, so one by one, let me just start adding the dried fruits into the bowl. We're just having the prunes, the cranberries, the apricots, the dates, raisins, blackcurrants. So now, when you're talking about the list of the dried fruits is given, and then the measurements of each of the dried fruits is given, and then I understand there could be doubt like, you know, should I really use the apricots? Can I that, like cranberries, can I skip that? You could, it's your choice. But then I prefer to use what is available to me, and that one thing is not also very expensive, but then everything is not just quite the low priced ones as well, which is like why I didn't use just the different raisins alone, because they are not as expensive, right? But the dry ginger, so whatever was available to me. Now here, what I feel makes the world of difference is the zest. Obviously that is easily available for us, the lemon and the orange zest, and the dried ginger I feel is very important, and the lemon and the orange peel is very important, and the rest, raisins obviously is very important, dates. What I could have done differently here is the cranberries, the apricots, and those that are not priced at the lower values, which are a bit expensive. The cranberries, the apricots obviously is a bit expensive. I could avoid that, but not always should I have to choose the dry fruits which are not as expensively priced. When you could add apricots, but then obviously in the costing, they are just going to meet up to what you're going to add. So in case you choose not to add maybe the apricots or cranberries, what you could do, to the exact measurement of the fruit that you're going to skip, then you could add maybe the raisins itself, or maybe the blackcurrants or some extra dates. But don't have just one of the fruit overpowering the entire fruit cake. You have to have the variety in the proportion that's been given. Like if you're going to skip apricot, have another fruit, dried fruit, which could replace the quantity of the apricot that that the recipe calls for. Okay, so now the zest is added, and I'm just going to mix the zest into the dried fruits. Okay, and then I'm just going to add the gorgeous rum into this bowl. So it smells so good, especially the zest at this part. I'm going to mix it up. And this I'm going to transfer into an airtight container and allow for a day. Now the next step will be cooking, right? Now, if you are going to do, and if you're going to use this, okay, fruit that you're going to soak, you might have to do the previous day, that when you're going to be ready for cooking. Now, because now I have to go with the workflow and finish the process at a stretch for you, I have the fruits that are soaked yesterday for me to move on to the next step. Now, at this stage, you could I could cling wrap this, or because you have to immediately, you know, wrap this up. You don't want to let the rum, the alcohol, to be left out, because it is going to start evaporating, right? So that you don't want to do. And so this, I'm just going to wait for the cling wrap and wrap this immediately. Like even before it is just going to go into the airtight bowl, I don't want to leave it open, because it's like letting the alcohol evaporate, and that I don't want to do. So this is being cling wrapped, and now I'm just going to set this aside. And now what I have here already is the one that has been soaked. Okay, let me just open. So how it looks when you are going to add the rum, you can see inside, and how it is after soaking. You can see that the rum is just not gone inside. So the fruits here, it's all plumped up a bit, and then you can't see the rum around here, right? So you can see, right, the rum is here around. So that you need to allow the dried fruits to soak up, which is cling wrap this and then keep it. So this is the soaked fruits that I'm going to use, and the rest of the ingredients are here for me for cooking. Okay, so I'm just going to, so what I have here are the soaked fruits that you see, and then the juices. The juices come in for the alcoholic version and the non-alcoholic version. And there's butter, brown sugar. Brown sugar is for the color. If you're looking at a lighter shade, then use white sugar in this place. I am more towards the color of the fruit cake also, so it's brown sugar everywhere. And then all the 4 spices which I have to carefully put it together. I do not prefer, I just want to turn it this side to show the spices. I do not prefer using the you know, or the allspice, or even the plum cake spice powder, or the Christmas fruit cake spice mix, whatever is available. I'd like to have the control of how much spice or what spice the fruit cake should contain. Now, how I made the spice powders. Now, where did I go for the cinnamon powder? Like, am I going out and buying the cinnamon powder itself? I don't prefer that. I prefer to make the spice powder also myself. So what I do, I buy the whole spices. I buy the dry ginger, the cinnamon sticks, you know, and each of that, the nutmeg, each of that, I process it in the mixie. I break them into smaller chunks, and then I put it in the mixie jar with a little bit of granulated sugar and process it into a fine powder. A little bit of sugar is enough to bring that all together into a fine powder. After which I use a tea strainer, the metal mesh, and then I sieve them completely and have the fine powder collected at the bottom. Then whatever you have, the bigger chunks, you can maybe put it back into the mixer jar and then process it again if it is the bigger quantity, or have all these bigger pieces together, and then you could, of all the spices, and put together and then process. So I prefer starting from the whole spice, and that is what I have here, and that is what I have used. I prefer do not use cinnamon powder itself, even available from the elite supermarkets. They do not have the right flavor. They are definitely adulterated, and the flavor that comes out of that cinnamon powder and that the cinnamon powder you make at home are totally different. So suggest make the spice powders yourself. Okay, so now I'm just going to start with putting the butter, okay, sugar, and the juice. and allow it to come to a boil. And then I'm going to add the spice powders. And once that comes to a boil, I'm going to put in the soaked fruits. I'm just going to mix it up. Allow the butter to melt a little bit. Then I'm adding the orange juice. So the juices obviously are fresh. I had bought the fresh orange, had bought the apple. I peeled the apple, the skin out, and then I had put it in the mixie and then sieved it. Like how we used to make fresh juice from the fresh fruit. Now, if you are in a hurry and if you think that you will not be able to make the juice because it is like for a cake, then maybe I've made for 100 cakes, would I be able to make as much of juice as possible? Like, would you like to cut down on that particular work? So for the fruits, yes, you can go for the fresh canned ones, like the Real or the Tropicana kind of stuff. And so make sure it is not sweetened. If there's a little bit of sweet, well, obviously it is fine to add the canned ones. But see, if you really like the flavor, and then you could use the juice. But then given the opportunity, if I have to use the can, maybe I will not. But then if there is like the 100 loaves that I have to make, then if that little labor has to be cut out, then I will choose to use the canned juices. But now onto this one, for the first trial, I suggest you to use the fresh ones. Now I'm just going to start adding the spices. So I've put in everything. I'm just going to allow it to become lump free, butter fully melted, the spices all incorporated. At that stage, I'm just going to add in the soaked fruits. Okay, so now I'm just adding in the soaked fruits. I'm just going to mix it up well. If there is any rum that's just lying under, I just want to bring it out all together and then put it into the boiling syrup with the fruit juice, the butter, brown sugar, and the spice. Okay, so this needs to boil for at least 15 minutes minimum. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, allow it to boil. I'm just going to not wait for it to boil because I have prepared the cooked version and I have it ready. So I thought this also, I just want you to follow and see. I'm not going to remove this off the heat. I'm just going to allow it to cook because you want the soaked fruits to just, become a little more soft. And okay, so this is what we have. And then the fruit juice is separate. What you can see is the fruit juice is separate, right? And then the dried fruits are separate. So now this, when you are going to cook, is all going to come together. And you will not find the water, the juice separately, and then the fruit separately. And that is what is going to get you the matured dried fruits together. Okay, so now this I'm going to set it aside while you are going to keep watching it, and I'm going to have my KitchenAid. So while the dried fruits, the soaked fruits are going to boil, I'm going to keep a watch on that of how it is going to boil. I'm going to keep showing it to you as that is getting progressed. I am going to start with the rich fruit cake itself. So let me have the ingredients right here. Okay, and then again, the spice mixes are divided in such a way that part of it goes into the soaked fruits like we have added already, and then the second half goes into the cake batter itself. So now this is like the common creaming method. This is very hot, very hot. Okay, you can microwave that. So the caramel syrup is thickened up. So I'm just getting it microwave. So it is the normal creaming method batter, but then it is made in a way that the fruit, the soaked up fruits are going to be put together into this, and the caramel cake is going to transform itself into a fruit cake, the rich fruit cake with the spices. Okay, so the soaked fruits, soaked fruits. Yeah. So the soaked fruits, you just go by the measurement like that. One batch is going to, I'm also going to have the spatula and then keep mixing this up while it is cooking. So this is the soaked and the cooked fruit that you can check. So that's how it becomes after it is cooked and cooled completely. So this is what we will be using. So that measurement that I have given you, that entire soaked and the cooked fruit will be used in that particular recipe. Okay. So let me start with sieving. I know if it all looks everything together, and I just want you to see whatever is to be in focus. So now we're just going to have only this bowl in focus. Okay, so into this, I'm going to add the dried ingredients together. So I'm just going to put in the flour, baking powder, baking soda. Okay, and then all the spice powders. Then I'm going to sift all of that together. Okay, and then I'm just going to have the dried fruits because they are quite dense, and then you can't have these soaked and cooked dried fruits adding into the batter separately. So you want the flour to go into the dried fruits. And then mix it up. So you want the dried fruits to be completely combined with the flour. So like every part of the dried fruit should be coated with the flour. That part is very important. So in the meantime, I'm just going to check out on the fruit as well. that is being cooked. Now it needs some time. So cut and fold, or you could just use your fingers. What you can see is the flour should coat the dried fruit completely. Now you don't want to see the traces of the flour separately, and you're just mixing the flour with the dried fruit. And there's no dry traces of the flour. Okay, so now this part is done. I'm just going to set it aside. Now set this aside, and what I have here is the flax meal. So if you do not get the flax meal, then what you're supposed to do is to get the flax seeds, and the flax seeds you are going to powder it into the mixie. Okay, and that will act like this best egg replacer, especially in this recipe. So I'm going to add the water and mix it up, and allow this to soak. Now this is going to become wobbly, and that will give the replacement for the egg into this recipe. So now I'm just keeping that aside. Now what more I have here to go into the batter is the butter sugar, and then the zest, lemon and orange, and obviously the flax meal, and then the vanilla, okay, and the nuts, and then the caramel syrup that was made. So this is what is going to go into the batter with some milk as per the recipe, okay, and with the soaked fruits. So all of this is now ready for the batter. Now the next step for us is to prepare the cake pan. I'm just going to put the ingredients here while I just get the pan ready. So now preparing the pan is a very, very important step for the fruit cake. And so I thought, instead of just telling you prepare the pan, I just wanted to do it myself and then, show it to you. So I'm just allowing, I just want to show how this one looks. You can still see the syrup is separate and the dried fruits is separate. It just needs to cook a little more. Okay, so I'm just going to allow it to cook on medium flame. You don't want to cook it on high, it's just on the lowest flame possible. So now what I have here is the cake ring, and then the cloth. And what else I need? Some safety pins are here because I just want to tie the cloth, the wet cloth around. And what I need is aluminium foil, which I'm just keeping it ready. Okay, so first step, let me line this bottom with aluminium foil as the first step. Okay, so the sides also give it that foil. It's still thin. After cool down, if it is still thin, can you put it to boil again? Yeah, I think you can put it to boil again. Yes, you can put it to boil for just a few minutes, but not too long, because you will not be able to judge the consistency when it is boiling. And if it is already thick on the stove, then you have trouble that it will be like really thick later on. So now the sides of the pan, and now I'm just going to line the inside. So So I'm just going to take this foil, fold it into half. I'm just going to flatten it out. I'm just going to go inside. You want it like really taller than the cake pan because we are going to over bake it, right? We are just going to bake it. Let me just check for how much more should I just reduce. You just don't want a lot of overlap inside the pan. Okay, just a little overlap to cover the inside. So if there's excess, I'm going to peel it out. I mean, tear it off again. So you need such a tall wall that you have to create using the foil because the cake is going to need that wall space to rise up. Okay, so I'm just going to tear up all the way till here. Don't want a lot of overlap because the batter is just going to run inside that. And so for me to let the foil stick, this is the pan release, okay, which I'm just going to first add at the bottom. Pan release is butter, oil, and flour at equal proportions, like 50 grams each. Beat it together. And you could store that in an airtight container in the refrigerator and allow it to thaw a bit, and that you could use it on your pan. So half the way, I'm just going to check out on the dried fruits that are cooking. Now I can still see there is a little bit of the syrup or the juice that's been poured in. I want to allow it to cook for some more time. Okay, so continuing to keep it, say maybe for 5 until not even 10 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes cooking time. I'm just going to allow this to be cooking again on the low. Now coming back to this pan, I have brushed the pan release and I'm going to start placing the foil on the inside with a little overlap. And I'm stretching it out as much, okay, with the help of the pan release on the inside of the ring that I just applied. I just want it to stay in place, okay. So you can see how the sides align and now how the height is also raised, right? Now, pan release part is done. And now for the wet cloth. So how are we going to do the wet cloth? I just could have told use a damp cloth, but I wanted to also show it to you. Okay, so that's cloth. Maybe I will need 2 of it. I'm just going to dip it in. You could just do it in your, tap water, doesn't matter. So all this step is like really important because 1.5 hours in the oven is like, you have to be really very careful. I'm just going to squeeze out water. Okay, so let me do that to both the squeezing out water. So that is what was that important step. I thought, I should just do it here in front of you and show. Now I'm going to set the water aside and wipe off the spilled water. Now the pan is here, right? And then the strip is here. Now let me just go around and hold the pan with the strip, the wet cloth, and the other second cloth. I just have to make it quite tight, right? So let me start with one place here and take a bigger safety pin, okay, and pin this part together. You could have a longer towel, then one of that should be quite fine. So I'm just pinning it here, right? So now this together will be one cloth. So I'm just going to get one end here, and then the other end, I think I'll just remove this, it just keeps turning. I'll put this back onto the tray after I'm done with this step. So I'm just going to make it as tight as possible, right? And get the bigger pin and pin it here. So now by the time it's baked, it is going to be almost dry with the heat of the oven. So I think that should be fine. So the outside is with a cloth, right? And then the inside is with an aluminum foil. And then the aluminum foil's height is quite tall. So this is a very important step. Do not miss this out, or you are going to have panic to put in the batter in the oven for about more than an hour. Okay, so by this step, you will just be fine for the batter and the cake together with this entire pan setup to be inside the oven baking for an hour and a half. Now I'm just going to set the prepared pan aside, and let's go into the cake making, which is, now I need, now before that, let me check if the cooking is done. Yeah, I think this is quite good. It started to coat the bottom of the saucepan. So beyond this, even on the lowest heat, it is going to maybe burn if I'm not going to keep on stirring it frequently. So this, you can see the juice is not separate. They're all soaked up with the dry fruit. The juice that I added is completely come together here, okay, at this stage. Okay, I'm just checking that the top angle has to come together. Okay, so I just want to show on the top angle how this fruit mix is. Okay, hope it's not blurry now. It is blurry. So we just want to show it on the side angle itself, so you could check the consistency, right? So you can see at this stage, the juice and the dried fruits come together, and you cannot find the juice running out separately. At that stage, you're good to go. So now, before moving on to the batter making. I'll just transfer this into a bowl. I need to allow it to cool down completely first before I cling wrap it or even transfer it into another airtight container. Okay, so now this is the consistency we are looking at from where it was soaked, right? And into this cooked stage where it is just given that matured fruit, texture that we are just looking at. Now, this is close to a year-old soaked fruit. That is like the gold which we are going to use into the rich fruit cake that we are going to make. Now, finally, we've come to the batter making step. As the first step, I'm going to add in the butter. Okay, and then goes the sugar. Now I'm just going to soften this up a bit so the paddle doesn't splatter out the sugar and the butter for me. Now I just need to beat this for 5 at least to 7 minutes until I'm going to have it very light, pale, and fluffy. I'm attaching with a paddle. Okay. Now going to run this now. Maybe I will be talking in between. Hopefully you'll be able to hear. I'm going to stop and show the texture. Okay, so also that the paddle attachment that I use has a silicone blade. I don't have to scrape, but then when you are using your handheld beater or the stand mixer without the silicone attachment, the paddle doesn't have, then you might have to scrape it all in between. And you can see it is just becoming lighter, but then it needs to become more light and fluffy. At this stage, I'm going to continue beating. just going to scrape it down as well, show how far the fluffiness has changed. This just changed from the stage it was previously in. I'm just going to combine and put them together. You can see the color has changed, become lighter. Scrape it, put it back. And then continue to beat. So after every time I was just showing it to you, you can see the color, how it is just changing. The one on the outer edge, you can see, that is a little darker, and then what has been beaten inside is just changing from one stage to the other, right? So that's what we are looking at. So it will take about 5 minutes, and that is very important for this, any creaming recipe for that matter, right? So after this, I will be adding in the egg replacer, which is the flax meal. Now it's just gone wobbly. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to add the entire flax meal replacement into the butter and sugar and beat again for a minute until this is completely incorporated. So now you can see the beautiful texture change with the addition of the flax meal. It's just got stiffened after the addition of the flax meal, right? So that 1 minute of putting it together is very important before we move on to the next step. So again, scraping down everything, and you can see how it is changed with the addition of flax meal into it. So now I'm just going to add in the vanilla extract. I use pure vanilla extract. I do not use the essences, the artificial flavoring. And then the zest. I just want to add, it's the lemon zest, and now I'm adding orange. A good zester is also an important thing for us to have. And then the caramel syrup, just a little bit, but obviously that caramel that you made, I could share some other recipes what you could do with that caramel that you made, you could half that recipe and make, but you could store it as well, and that will be coming in handy for a lot of places, even for gingerbread man cookies. The caramel syrup will come in handy, and a lot of other cakes recipes that I will also share, where you can just use of that caramel syrup or half the recipe. So now I've added in everything except for what else I have here is the milk, nuts, and the fruits that's been covered with flour and kept. Now this I'm just going to put it in, combine everything, beating for medium speed for about a minute. Okay, so everything combined, and now at this stage I'm going to add the fruit that's been drenched with the flour, and then the milk. I'm going to add it alternatingly. Okay, so the fruit, I'm just going to add half of it. First, fold it with a spatula, half only. Now, after each addition, we're just looking at beating. For that, first you need to combine this together. We could just also fold, but then folding, like we are not supposed to overbeat after this stage. So beating, it is like very important, very crucial on the slow speed, just a few seconds. Because at this stage is like, we just need to be folding in. But then sometimes what happens, folding in, if it is not happening like really properly, then things don't combine well. So on the slow speed, just a few seconds, maybe 10. So even lesser than 10, I see it is nicely combined, right? I just want to put the batter down from the paddle and take it and show it to you. Okay, so that's the batter after the addition of the first part of the fruits. Now, half of the milk, right? Just the half. Now again, you don't want that to splatter. So I'm just folding it in like cut and fold. Don't worry if it is like starting to look like curdled, it is going to come together after. We are just going to beat it. Again, very slow speed, the first speed, few seconds only. That's it. So this is again a very, very important step, which you don't want to, miss out after adding the dry fruits mixed with flour and then the milk coming into picture. You have to be really careful, few seconds on slow speed. Okay, so now at this stage, I'm going to add in the second portion of the fruits. So all the fruits are incorporated. Again, here, you don't want it to splatter, right? So folding it. Get it mixed up well. Just go until the bottom of the bowl, scrape it down. Now beating after each addition, the recipe says, which means now let's not add the milk, which is with the dried fruits that's been folded in. Few seconds, slow speed. That's it. It's just not even taking 3 minutes. 10 minutes could be more. So 3 minutes. I'm just checking, like, the dried fruits together with everything else. Sorry, seconds. I think I, by mistake, said minutes. 3 seconds only, right? That you were just seeing. So that's the texture. Beautiful. It looks now the last portion of the Malcosin. I'm going to fold this in. Especially when I'm using the paddle attachment with a silicone sides, it could splatter out the liquid or even the dry. So I prefer mixing it once. But then not take the trouble of completely mixing it together with just the folding, because by just folding without going into that 3-second beating, I need to have a good arm power to fold it completely together. To avoid that, extra effort, folding it just until combined there, and that 3-second beating on slow speed will do what's needed. So the batter is ready. Now I could just get the paddle out. Now one last step remains, which is to add the nuts. So the mixed nuts are here. I'm going to add it in. The toasted nuts that are chopped. Toasted nuts gives a really nice flavor. They are a mix of cashews, almonds, pistas, and walnuts. So the ones that are easily available to us. Okay. So that's the batter. Now I just go till the bottom. So everything has come together. Okay. All the nuts, the fruits, everything is put together. Now I get the baking tray that I had just prepared. I'm going to start to add the prepared batter into it. I'm scraping down completely. You can see the quantity of the batter is just rising almost to the height of the ring, cake ring. You could use the cake pan as well. In that case, you can skip that step where I had just lined the bottom. That step you can skip. You can just line the sides with a foil. Foil, I feel, gives that sturdy wall that is needed for the cake to rise on the sides. Okay, so now I'm just going to level the top. And there's one tip that you could follow to make a dent in the center. Very gentle, very, very mild dent, and get the batter raised to the sides. So that is going to give you a flat top. Now you could arrange the nuts on the top, like the blanched almonds. Okay, so you could blanch the almonds the previous day, remove the skin, peel off the skin, and also walnuts and cashews. And then if this is going to be a loaf as a whole, I mean, the entire thing is like the cake as a whole, then you could add all the nuts, decorate them on the top of this prepared pan. Now you can see the dent Just like to show on the side of how the, the dent has been created. Okay, so I'm just holding. So you can see how the, the sides are raised a bit, and then the center I've just created a small cavity kind of a thing. Okay, so the sides are raised, and then with the cavity, why we are doing that is to avoid that doom for the top, like because it is baking there for quite a while, there are more chances that the top could doom, and then have the doomed top, and that you could avoid by creating this little cavity in the middle. And after that, you could add the blanched almonds. If you're going to use walnuts, cashews and pistas, you could just use them, like the dried fruits itself. It's going to go into the oven. It'll get toasted while it is getting baked together with it. So you don't have to toast them before adding it on the top. But then what is inside, we just want it to be toasted because that flavor makes a difference. So now this will go into the oven. So what I'm going to do is to allow this to bake. At the end of the session, I'm going to show this same cake here. So we could just have the experience of what I baked is what you will see. Unlike, because we also have the time while we're going to do the rest of the other three products, right? So this is going to go and get baked for about 1 hour and 30 minutes, solid 90 minutes is going to be there. Cookie. So this is that beautiful loaf. It is quite warm at the bottom. Okay. So you can see the cake is just brown. So what you need at the end is surface on the top like that, which is quite brown on the edge, and the top is also quite brown. Okay, and it has taken here 1.5 hour and little more, 1 hour 40 minutes, 45. So 1.5 hour, and then even the top could be a little firmer. So for that, 15 more minutes has gone in. So 1 hour and 45 minutes has gone in to bake this. Okay, and I'm just going to slowly remove layer by layer. The cloth is completely dry at this stage. Okay, so removing the cloth layer first, it just goes to wash. And you could take off, open up the outer layer because there is no base, right? Open it up and gently trying to get the ring out. Obviously, the base is just quite nicely done. It has come out of the bottom foil, right? Just going to release, have a knife. So this foil and the ring should separate itself out. So if there's any place where maybe a little batter could have gone in, so releasing that part first and taking the ring out. Okay, so then gently opening out the foil. And next here for the alcoholic version, this because that is that one step we will be having. For the non-alcoholic version, you will just not soak it with anything and wrap it and keep. Okay, it is good to go the next day. You can start eating. And the storage is like a week, cling wrapped and stored in the fridge. And from then on, it is good to go. In the fridge is good to go. And thawed in the room temperature before it has to be eaten, right? Okay. So first thing, I'm just going to place it. You could do it while it is quite warm. Place it on the cling wrap, and then the rum is there with a pastry brush. Okay, so now before cling wrapping, I'm just going to start adding in the rum. So the rum will just get itself soaked. So depending on how much of the alcoholic punch you would like to have in your fruit cake. You can decide whether you would like to use the entire quantity. Like when I did the trials here, with, our entire team had been tasting it out, and then we really thought, we kept on adding a tablespoon at a time, and then thought, okay, this much is just the right punch that is needed. So you could maybe first add half of what is given, okay, and then taste that and see. Then based on that, you could decide if you need more. So this much is what I felt is just right to give the alcohol punch in the fruit cake. So this entire thing will just go in and then get itself soaked up, okay? So you could just pour and then brush on the sides, and that's why there is cling wrap. Then once you're going to wrap it, the alcohol on the sides as well is just going to get in and soak itself into the sponge. Okay, so I'm just going to wrap this. So don't allow the rum to come out. We just need to carefully seal it in. Now I'm going to do another layer of the cling wrap as well. Okay, so this was going to have the rum completely soaked up into the cake, and we need to just leave this in the room temperature for maybe 2 days until we are just going to allow the rum to completely go into the cake. Okay, so on top of this, you could do an aluminum foil as well. So just in case if there is any way that the alcohol evaporates, if you're going to store it for longer, and because there is alcohol in it, that will act as a preservative. So if you're going to store it for longer, on top of the cling wrap, this is just for storage before it is going to go out for serving or to any of your clients. You're going to keep it in room temperature. Don't change the shape. Just gently wrap it up with the foil, okay, and store it in a cool room temperature. Now, if you are not going to use the alcohol, you could cling wrap it, and the foil part is not needed. You can cling wrap it and then leave it in the room temperature if you're going to eat it the next day or the other next day. And if you're going to maybe say eat it or give it out to anybody else, like maybe 3 days after you have baked, then obviously it has to go into the fridge for storage. For non-alcoholic, what do we brush? I think I told you, don't brush it with anything. You just don't brush it with anything. After it is taken out of the oven, remove from the pan and cling wrap it, and it is good to go. You can start eating the next day. You don't soak it with anything. You can send it out to other cities. Yes. So nicely packed. If you're going to keep it with you, allowing the rum, the alcohol to get soaked up, and that's when you need the aluminum foil wrap also. You're just trying to keep the inside like really dark and allowing it to mature with the alcohol, to seep the alcohol into the cake. Now, if you're going to send it out to other cities, then you need remove the foil. Cling wrap will remain, and then you can decorate and do the ribbon and stuff, all that, and make it like the Christmassy packaging. And you can also get the tins, right? The metal tins that fit in the exact size of the cake. Put it in so it doesn't shake too much. Obviously, with the cling wrap, it is not going to harm. Okay.